Greetings from SFGAM studio. I'm Amron Paul with Zachary Nightingale, who is actually immigration attorney in San Francisco, who has done so many cases from Asia as well regarding the GBLT community case. So good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. So let's talk about the current situation now in the U.S. regarding the GBLT, gay marriage, and all those kind of things. There's so many questions has been arised here. So hopefully you can clarify a little bit on this.
So U.S. immigration law has a mixed history as far as the LGBT community. On the one hand, in the asylum context, U.S. law has recognized gay, what I call gay asylum as an abbreviation, and sexual orientation as a category for those seeking the protection of asylum. On the other hand, immigration law is federal law, which is distinct from the various U.S. states that have recognized same-sex immigration. In the federal law system, there is no recognition of same-sex relationships, to the extent that there's even a federal law called the Defense of Marriage Act, which prevents the federal government and immigration law from recognizing same-sex marriages that are now occurring legally in the United States and other countries. So unfortunately, even though there's been a lot of success in the gay marriage front in the individual states, and of course in many countries outside the United States, U.S. immigration law does not recognize those at all. There are a number of lawsuits within the United States that are now starting to challenge the Defense of Marriage Act. I don't believe that any individuals in same-sex marriages should affirmatively come forward yet and ask for immigration benefits, because they're going to have to be denied. But we're waiting to see, we're cautiously optimistic about some of the lawsuits that are challenging the Defense of Marriage Act, not in the immigration context, but in other federal benefits. And if those are successful, the logic could then transfer to immigration. So we're waiting to see how that goes. In the meantime, those who are insistent on resolving their immigration issues through their same-sex partners are, unfortunately, have to look at other countries like Canada, Australia, and Western Europe.
Right. And let's talk about a few cases that you have done from Asia.
There is, well, asylum law has been with us for decades, and for the past 15 to 20 years, the U.S. government has been recognizing that individuals persecuted because of their sexual orientation, because of their feminine identity, if they're a gay man. Conversely, I suppose their non-traditional masculine identity, if they're a gay woman. Also, their transgender status, or even their HIV status, could be a category that qualifies for protection under U.S. asylum law. So there are many requirements that one has to meet in order to actually obtain this protection. It's not given out liberally, and it's not given out easily. But individuals who have a legitimate fear of being harmed in some significant way in their home country, and they cannot receive the protection of their home government for whatever reason, could be eligible for asylum. As a practical matter, in my experience with clients from Asia and other countries, if the individual has actually suffered some sort of harm, or what immigration law refers to as persecution, in the past, it makes their case stronger, because the law recognizes if it's happened before, it could very likely happen again. That's not to say that it's a requirement, but it certainly makes the case easier. Many times individuals live in countries where there's a very repressive environment, and they haven't had the ability to come out. And so they never actually tested the waters, so to speak, in their home country about what would happen to them. Oftentimes I ask my clients, do you have friends who did? Do you have friends who were beaten up or harmed when they tried to come out or had other negative experiences, and you learned the lesson not to try that? Well, those kinds of threats or implied threats could, under certain circumstances, also constitute a form of persecution.
I see.
So I've had clients who have come to me in the United States, and oftentimes they've never told anybody the story before as to what's happened to them in their home country. And oftentimes I will set them up with a mental health professional because it's very difficult for people to tell those stories
Yes,
and to
yes.
acknowledge what happened. And oftentimes I have to work hand in hand as the lawyer with a mental health professional to help somebody have more ease in telling their story. One of the things about asylum law, although it's very positive, that makes it difficult is someone has to be able to verbalize. Someone has to be able to come forward and explain what's happened to them, and that's difficult for a lot of people, especially if they come from a culture or tradition where they're just told not to tell.
Yes, so I remember that because I myself actually came here as a political asylum, and I remember that you have to have at least 3 basic persecution. Is that correct?
Well, you have to, you either have to show that you've been persecuted before,
Right.
or that there is some really good chance it would happen in the future if it never happened before. And if it has happened before, then you don't have to come up with separate evidence for the future as much. But the law has gotten stricter, probably even than at the time you applied,
Right.
which is that if the government has doubts about the veracity or accuracy of your claim, they can ask you to come up with corroborating evidence.
I see.
And there are cases that have been published where they even question the person's sexual orientation. And I think probably most of us and your viewers will know that sexual orientation often is a continuum. And some people classify themselves as bisexual. And that's something, to be honest, that immigration law has a hard time with. Immigration law in the United States, unfortunately, likes to put people into boxes, as much as we don't want to be put into boxes, right?
Right, right, right.
And so even to the point of filling out the form, you have to check off which box you're applying under. And I always explain to my clients that sometimes you have to start thinking a little differently than the way you've thought about it before, for the sole purpose of being able to express yourself in a way that the immigration law system will understand.
Right.
The basic thing, I think, is that if you have suffered because of your sexual orientation in your home country, it's worth it to talk to a qualified professional who is a specialist in asylum, and not all immigration attorneys are necessarily specialists in asylum either.
Yes.
And some specialists in asylum aren't necessarily attorneys, but you should either talk to an attorney or somebody who's actually found to be what's called an accredited representative.
And how can they find out all this information?
The first of all, the every state bar and some local bar organizations will have referrals.
Okay.
Depending on the community you live in, most of the big cities in the United States will have a LGBT lawyers organization.
Okay.
If you want a referral to a local attorney who is gay, and they're probably more likely to have information about gay asylum.
Correct.
And there's also organizations of immigration attorneys who often have gay members or members who are gay friendly.
Okay.
Therefore, usually you can get referrals in that way.
Right. And how, again, I did last time, my case, they asked me to call, I forgot the number, like BAR or something, and then from there they actually talk to you, and then they refer me to
There are
attorney,
referral
right?
services. The National Center for Lesbian Rights in San Francisco has a referral service, which is a free service where you meet with an attorney and then they'll refer you to somebody. And many other attorney organizations in the United States have those referrals. So I recommend somebody go to one of those referrals because you need somebody who's qualified.
All right. Well, we'll be right back after this, okay? Just stay tuned.